Your contract is canceled immediately. Keith Bradley's voice sliced through the boardroom. The vice president of operations stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, radiating the kind of arrogance that comes from never facing real consequences in his entire life. I looked up from my laptop, where lines of green code scrolled across 3 separate windows. The security protocol I had been monitoring for the past 9 months was running perfectly. Green indicators lit up across the entire display. The $640 million defense grid protecting Atlas Networks and 22 Fortune 500 clients was humming flawlessly in the background. "Excuse me," I said calmly, keeping my voice flat and even. "You heard me, Dean," Keith said, using my first name like a weapon. "We are terminating your consulting contract, effective immediately. You have exactly 15 minutes to pack your things and exit the building." The other executives suddenly found their notes and coffee cups very interesting. Miriam Vance from legal stared at her pad. Bruce Miller from finance studied his cup. Only Clara Jenkins, the chief technology officer who had brought me on, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I smiled. It was not a big smile, just a small, knowing curve of my lips that had nothing to do with humor. "All right," I said, and began disconnecting my laptop from the main display system. Keith blinked. He had expected arguments, excuses, or begging. Instead of giving him the satisfaction of a scene, I calmly wrapped my cables and gathered my notebooks from the conference table where I had worked for 9 months. "That is it?" Keith demanded, his voice rising in frustration. "No protests? No arguments about how much you were worth?" I stood up, slinging my heavy leather bag over my shoulder. "What would be the point? You have made your decision, Keith. I am not in the business of begging for my job." "Damn right I have," Keith sneered, regaining his posture. "This company does not need overpriced external consultants who think they are irreplaceable. My internal team can handle everything you do. They are more than capable." "I am sure they can," I said pleasantly, keeping my expression entirely neutral. His confidence flickered for a fraction of a second. Something in my pleasant tone registered as a threat, but he was far too deep into his power trip to back down now. "Security will escort you out of the building," he announced, gesturing toward the 2 uniformed guards standing near the glass doors. "That will not be necessary," I said, stepping past them. I walked toward the exit, then paused with my hand on the doorknob. "Just one question, Keith. Who is going to explain to the chairman why the entire security protocol disappears in exactly 4 minutes?" The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. "What did you say?" I checked my watch, tapping the face with a finger. 3 minutes and 40 seconds now, to be precise. "You see, the security architecture I built has certain legal and operational contingencies. It is a credential validation protocol. My specific developer license needs to authenticate with the core servers every 48 hours. If those credentials fail to authenticate, the system recognizes it as an unauthorized breach or a hostile takeover. When that happens, it initiates a complete protective lockdown. It is a standard safety feature. We cannot have unauthorized personnel accessing a $640 million defense grid." "You are bluffing," Keith said, but his voice had lost its aggressive edge, replaced by a tremor of doubt. 3 minutes and 10 seconds, I replied. "But as you said, your internal team can handle it. I am sure they will figure it out. If you are enjoying this story of corporate karma, consider subscribing. We are working toward 5,000 subscribers, and your support means everything." Now, let's get back to Keith's mistake. My name is Dean Barlow. Before that day, people in cybersecurity knew me as the man who built unbreakable systems. I was not born into wealth. My father, Harvey Barlow, was a mechanic in Detroit. My mother, Martha Barlow, managed a diner. They taught me to solve problems with whatever tools you have and to treat everyone with dignity. My father used to tell me that a man who looks down on the janitor is the same man who will crumble when the pipes burst, because he never learned to respect the systems keeping him dry. I carried that philosophy through Michigan State, through my graduate work at Carnegie Mellon, and into every single contract I took in the 26 years that followed. That understanding of how systems work from the ground up made me very good at my job. At Atlas Networks, my official title was Senior Security Architecture Consultant. The reality was that 9 months ago, Their entire digital infrastructure was hemorrhaging critical vulnerabilities. And Clara Jenkins had called me at 2 in the morning, practically begging me to save them. I built them a security protocol from the scratch. It was a beautiful piece of engineering, utilizing quantum-resistant encryption and real-time threat detection. It was also protected by my personal patents under Title 35 of the United States Code, Section 271. I had licensed my proprietary encryption engine to them, but the license was strictly tied to my active developer credentials. By canceling my contract and revoking my access, Keith had legally and technically terminated the software license. The system was now doing exactly what it was programmed to do. It was securing itself against unlicensed, unauthorized use. All of this was documented, but Keith had never bothered to read the pages of the agreement before signing it. "You are lying," Keith barked, stepping toward the conference table. "This is extortion. You cannot just lock us out of our own system. It is a crime." I shook my head, amused by his panic. "It is not a crime, Keith. It is a security feature that is fully documented in the technical specifications. If you had bothered to read the contract, or even the system manual, you would know this. Look at Section 47, subsection C, under Authentication Protocols and Licensing Failsafes." Miriam Vance, the legal representative, frantically turned the pages of the thick binder on the table. Her fingers trembled as she scanned the lines. Her eyes widened, and the color began to leave her face as well. "Keith, he is right," she whispered, her voice tight. "The agreement explicitly states that the encryption core utilizes proprietary software patented by Dean Barlow under patent number 9,876,543. The license is non-transferable and remains active only during his active service. If the service agreement is terminated, the license terminates, and any continued operation constitutes willful patent infringement under Title 35, Section 271. Keith glared at the attorney. "So what? We will just override it. We own this system. We paid him to build it." "Actually, you did not," I corrected him. "You paid for a service, not the intellectual property rights, and if you attempt to bypass the lockdown, you are committing a federal civil violation." But it gets even more interesting for you, Keith. I know about the intellectual property transfer document your assistant tried to slip into my signature packet last month. The one where you tried to transfer my patents onto Atlas Networks. I did not sign it, but I noticed a signed copy was uploaded to the corporate registry last week with a signature that looks remarkably like mine. Keith froze, his eyes shifting nervously. "I have no idea what you mean," he stammered. "I think you do," I said quietly. "Forging a signature on a commercial contract is a felony under California Penal Code Section 470. Since the signature was forged, that transfer document is void from the beginning. It has no legal standing. That means Atlas Networks has zero rights to my patent, and you are personally facing criminal forgery charges," Miriam gasped, turning to stare at Keith in sheer disbelief. "Keith, tell me you did not do that." Keith ignored her, his chest heaving as he stared at me. "Just authenticate the system, Dean. We will sort out the details later. I will make sure you get paid." "With what credentials?" I asked, holding up my dark laptop screen. "You just terminated my contract." "My developer credentials were automatically revoked by the primary server 5 minutes ago. If I were to attempt a login now, the system would flag it as an unauthorized intrusion attempt and accelerate the lockdown immediately. The safety protocols would encrypt the entire database, and you would lose everything." The room erupted in immediate chaos. Bruce Miller was on his phone, shouting at someone in finance to check the insurance policies. Miriam was whispering fiercely to Keith, who was sweating through his expensive tailored suit. 2 minutes, I announced, checking my watch. Clara Jenkins finally found her voice. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Dean, please. Is there any way to stop this? We have 22 Fortune 500 clients depending on this security grid. If it goes down, their operations will be completely exposed." I had always respected Clara. She was a competent engineer who had been dealt a bad hand by Keith's corporate maneuvering. "There is a way, Clara," I said softly, "but it requires someone with root administrator access to manually input the master override sequence before the countdown hits 0. Once that is done, the system needs to be recalibrated with new primary developer credentials. The entire process takes about 90 minutes for someone who actually knows what they are doing. We will pay you double your hourly rate, Clara said immediately, not even looking at Keith. Triple. Whatever you want, Dean. Just stop the lockdown. That is not her decision to make, Keith snapped, trying to regain control of the meeting. I am not rewarding this technical terrorism. I will not be blackmailed by a consultant? Blackmailed? I asked, raising my eyebrows. I am standing here empty-handed, Keith. You are the one who terminated the agreement. I am simply explaining the technical and legal realities of the system you chose to discard without understanding how it works. 1 minute and 30 seconds, I said, checking my watch again. Keith lunged for the conference phone, his fingers hitting the buttons with violent force. Get me Gavin Taylor in IT, he roared into the speaker. Tell him to get up to conference room A right now, and tell him to bring every security technician he has. The boardroom door burst open less than a minute later. Gavin Taylor, the head of information technology, rushed into the room followed by his senior systems analyst, Sarah Gibson. Both of them looked red-faced, out of breath, and deeply alarmed. The atmosphere in the conference room was thick with tension, and my calm presence stood in stark contrast to the panic vibrating from the executives. What is the emergency, Keith? Gavin panted, adjusting his glasses. The network monitoring desk just reported that our primary authentication nodes are flagging a critical validation countdown. The security grid is about to shut down in 45 seconds, Keith shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Gavin's laptop. You need to access the root directory right now, navigate to the core licensing protocols, and input the override sequence. Do it immediately. Gavin set his laptop on the table, flipping it open and logging in with frantic keystrokes. What override sequence? He asked, his eyes darting across his screen. I do not see any override commands in the standard administration dashboard. It is in the system documentation, I said calmly, leaning back against the glass wall. Look under Section 47, Subsection C, Appendix 12. Sarah Gibson pulled up the internal documents server on her tablet, her fingers sweeping across the screen. I do not have Appendix 12, she said, her voice rising in panic. Our documentation directory only goes up to Appendix 9. Gavin, the files we were given do not have any appendices beyond 9. I looked at Keith, letting a cold smile play on my face. Let me guess. You did not want to pay for the extended technical documentation package. You cut it from the project budget to show a cost saving on your quarterly report. That was an optional add-on. Keith exploded, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of purple. They wanted $25,000 for a PDF. I was not going to authorize $25,000 of company money for a single digital document when we already paid you $640 million for the system. That single digital document, Keith, contained the entire operational architecture, the emergency protocols, the manual override sequences, and the licensing maintenance guidelines, I explained. You tried to save $25,000 on a system that protects the core assets of 24 major corporations, and now you have 20 seconds left. Dean, please, Clara begged, her voice cracking. Just tell us the override sequence. We will pay the $25,000 right now. I looked at Clara, then at Gavin. They were good people caught in the middle of a manager's foolish ego trip. The override sequence is a 32-character, randomized alphanumeric string with special symbols in Greek letters, I said. I can recite it to you, but Gavin has to type it perfectly on the first attempt. If he makes a single error, the system will interpret it as a brute force decryption attempt and lock down the servers instantly. Gavin's hands hovered over the keyboard, visibly shaking. I am ready, Dean. Tell me the sequence is capital Q7, ampersand, capital Delta, 99, capital K, pound sign, capital Omega. I recited, wait. Gavin stammered, his fingers freezing. How do I input Greek letters into the command line? Is there a Unicode shortcut or an alt code? I do not know the alt codes off the top of my head, Sarah cried, her fingers flying across her tablet as she searched the local offline database. What is the code for Delta? What is the code for Omega? 10 seconds, Bruce Miller whispered, staring at his watch. You cannot input it in time, I said quietly. Not without the pre-formatted documentation template. You cannot guess the formatting. Keith looked like he was about to have a medical emergency. $5 million, he blurted out, his hands slamming onto the mahogany table. I will authorize a payment of $5 million to your firm right now, Dean. Just make this stop. You cannot stop it, Keith, I replied. The script is compiled and executing in the root directory. But for $5 million, I will gladly rebuild the licensing database and restore to the system after the lockdown completes. 5, 4, 3. Bruce counted down, his voice trembling. 2, 1. Simultaneously, every laptop and tablet in the room emitted a sharp, synchronized chime. The green indicators on the wall monitors blinked once, then went dark. A single line of bright red text appeared across Gavin's monitor. Security Protocol Alpha 7. Critical licensing authentication failure. Initiating protective lockdown. All systems securing. No, 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 Gavin muttered, tapping the keys frantically. The terminal is not responding. I am completely locked out of the root server. Sarah's phone began to buzz in her hand, followed immediately by Gavin's desk phone, ringing from the speaker system. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, we could see the open-plan office downstairs. Employees were standing up from their cubicles, staring at their monitors, and talking loudly in confusion. Keith slowly turned to look at me, the arrogance completely gone from his eyes, replaced by pure terror. The phones in the room were all ringing now, a discordant chorus of panic. Fix it, Keith whispered. Please, Dean. Just fix it. The phones in the boardroom would not stop ringing. The entire corporate office of Atlas Networks had descended into a state of panic within a matter of minutes. Outside the room, we could hear the sounds of raised voices and hurried footsteps as managers tried to understand why every client dashboard had suddenly gone dark. Miriam Vance answered her cell phone, listened for 2 seconds, and winced. It is Garrison Aerospace, she said, looking at Keith with wide eyes. They are demanding to know why their real-time perimeter monitoring has gone offline. Tell them it is a temporary network glitch, Keith hissed, wiping sweat from his forehead. Tell them we are performing emergency maintenance and everything will be back online shortly. They are a federal defense contractor, Keith, Miriam replied, her voice shaking. They do not accept excuses about temporary glitches. Our service level agreement requires 99.99% uptime. We are already in breach of contract. Bruce Miller's cell phone buzzed next. He read the screen and closed his eyes. The Network Operations Center reports that all 24 client tunnels are completely down, he said. They are asking if we are under a coordinated cyber attack. I pulled out a chair and sat down at the table, folding my hands. It is not a cyber attack, Bruce. It is the security grid doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is protecting the patented licensing nodes from unlicensed, unauthorized access. Your client's data is completely safe and encrypted, but they will not be able to access the network until the system validates a legitimate license. You are the threat, Keith screamed, slamming his fist onto the table. You did this to us. No, Keith, I said calmly. I built the wall. You are the one who fired the architect and tore down the license agreement without reading the fine print. I am the only solution you have left. Clara Jenkins stepped between us, her voice firm. Dean, what are your terms to resolve this? We need to act before this becomes a catastrophic business failure. I opened my laptop, booted up my backup drive, and displayed a document on the wall projector. I had prepared these terms 3 months ago when Keith first started hinting at replacing me with his brother-in-law's firm, Briggs Security Group. These are my conditions, I said. First, I want a new contract, not as an external consultant, but as the Chief Security Officer of Atlas Networks, with a permanent seat on the executive board. Keith began to object, but Clara silenced him with a cold, piercing glare. Second, I demand full, unilateral authority over all security infrastructure, personnel, and IT resources. Gavin and his team will report directly to me, ensuring we have unified operations. Third, I require a budget of $30 million annually for security operations, staff development, and infrastructure maintenance. That is nearly 5% of the total $640 million investment you made in this grid. It is a reasonable insurance policy to prevent another disaster like today. Miriam scanned the document on the screen. And the fourth point? Fourth, I want complete access to all executive board meetings and corporate financial disclosures, I said. I cannot protect an enterprise if I do not understand its business strategy, mergers, acquisitions, and personnel shifts. That is insane, Keith muttered. You are demanding control of the company. I am demanding the authority to do my job, Keith, I replied. Right now, your security is compromised because a manager made a personnel decisions based on ego rather than technical understanding. I will not allow that to happen again. Clara's phone rang. She looked at the screen, her expression tightening instantly. She looked up at the room. It is the chairman, Walter Brooks. The boardroom went silent. Walter Brooks was a legend in the tech industry, having built Atlas Networks from a small startup into a multi-million-dollar empire. He was famously demanding and had zero tolerance for corporate posturing or executive incompetence. Clara pressed the speaker button. Clara, explain to me why I am receiving calls from the chief executives of 24 different corporations, asking why their defense monitoring has collapsed. Walter's voice boomed through the room. And tell me why my personal home security node just sent me a critical lockdown alert. Sir, there was a service agreement termination that triggered a system protection protocol, Clara said, choosing her words carefully. We are working to resolve the issue as we speak. A termination? Walter's voice was freezing. Keith, was this your doing? Keith cleared his throat, his voice cracking. Sir, I made a management decision to reduce external consultant fees and transition operations to our internal team. I was not fully informed of the technical dependencies. You were not informed? Walter replied. We hired Dean Barlow at an extraordinary cost because he is the foremost authority on quantum-resistant security. What part of his credentials suggested to you that his presence was optional? Keith, where is Dean right now? I am right here. Mr. Brooks, I said. Dean, I apologize for this operational failure, the chairman said, his tone softening slightly. I assume there is a way to restore the system. What do you require? I have presented my terms to the executive team, I said. A new contract as chief security officer, a board seat, and the resources to maintain the system properly. Says the document to my email immediately, Walter commanded. If the terms are reasonable, you will have my signed approval within 30 minutes. How long will it take to get the clients back online? 90 minutes once my credentials are restored, and I have physical access to the server room, I replied. Miriam, restore Dean's developer credentials immediately, Walter ordered. Use my personal override code if you encounter any system resistance. Keith, my office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp. Bring your resume. The call went dead. Keith looked like he had aged 20 years in 20 seconds. Miriam Vance worked quickly. Within 60 seconds, she restored my master developer credentials on the server. Using the override code from Chairman Walter Brooks, I closed my laptop and looked at Gavin Taylor and Sarah Gibson. Let's go to the server room, I said. I will need both of you to assist me with the manual restoration sequence. The server room was in the basement, protected by 3 heavy doors and biometric scanners. Right now, because of the lockdown, all standard access was frozen. The only way inside was the backup code from the chairman. I typed the sequence into the panel. The lock clicked, and the steel door opened. Gavin and Sarah followed me past rows of humming server racks. I sat at the glass-enclosed console, plugged in my drive, and logged in. The system immediately responded with a prompt. Authentication confirmed. Barlow Dean, primary architect credentials verified. Lockdown status active, awaiting restoration sequence. I turned to them. The lockdown acts like a drawbridge, I explained. When the system detects a licensing breach, it pulls up the bridge. Our job is to show the system the license is active so it can lower the bridge. How does it verify that? Sarah asked, opening her notebook. First, we verify identity, I said. Second, we confirm the licensing issue is resolved. I entered a command updating the registry to show an active license. The terminal screen blinked, transitioning from red to yellow text. Licensing verification complete. Threat assessment scan initiated. This scan takes 40 minutes, I told them. The engine is auditing every node to ensure no breaches occurred during lockdown. Let's look at the architecture while we wait. I pulled up a schematic diagram on the side monitor. The security grid uses a 3-layer defense model. The outer layer is the moat. It monitors all incoming traffic and uses machine learning to identify anomalous behavior. The middle layer is the wall, which handles active threat detection, threat isolation, and containment protocols. If an attacker somehow breaches the moat, the wall immediately traps them in a virtual honeypot, presenting them with realistic but completely fake databases while isolating their connection. And the third layer? Gavin asked, looking impressed. The third layer is the keep, I said. This is the inner sanctum, where the most sensitive data is stored. It uses my patented quantum-resistant encryption. Even if someone manages to bypass the moat and the wall, breaking the keep's encryption by brute force would require more computing power than exists on the planet and more time than the universe has existed. It is mathematically impractical. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw an email from Chairman Walter Brooks. The message was brief. Dean, your contract terms are approved with minor adjustments to the equity structure. Miriam is preparing the formal paperwork. Welcome to the executive team as our new chief security officer. I smiled, showing the screen to Gavin and Sarah. It looks like we have a lot of work ahead of us, I said. The system console emitted a soft chime. The text on the terminal turned green. Threat assessment scan complete. Zero vulnerability detected. System integrity at 100%. Awaiting restoration of client connections. Now we restore the network, I said. We do this methodically, one client at a time, starting with Garrison Aerospace. We do not bring all 24 clients back online simultaneously, because we want to monitor the network load and ensure no routing errors occur during the transition. I entered the command to initialize the Garrison Aerospace tunnel. The red status bar on the dashboard shifted to yellow, then turned a solid, reassuring green. Next, I brought Oak Ridge Financial online, followed by Summit Manufacturing. One by one, the client connections lit up green on the status board. By the 78th minute, all 24 client networks were fully restored and operating at peak capacity. My phone began buzzing with confirmation messages from Bruce Miller and Clara Jenkins. The crisis was over. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7:30, my first official day as Chief Security Officer. At 9:30, I attended the executive board meeting. Keith Bradley sat at the far end of the table, his usual arrogance completely gone, replaced by a quiet, defeatist posture. Walter Brooks opened the meeting by welcoming me to the board. He then announced that Keith was being reassigned to a special business development role in a subsidiary company, with no direct reports, no budget authority, and a significant reduction in compensation. It was a severe demotion, but not a termination. Later that afternoon, the chairman called Clara and me into his office. He proposed expanding my role to oversee all technical operations in coordination with Clara, establishing a shared leadership structure to ensure technical expertise was always aligned with business decisions. I accepted the role, knowing that the journey from my father's mechanic garage in Detroit to the executive boardroom of Atlas Networks had been built on simple principles. You treat people with respect, you build systems that last, and you never let arrogance blind you to the value of the people who keep the machinery running. Keith had tried to knock me down, but his actions had only proven the value of the work I had done. Real power does not come from holding others back. It comes from building a system where everyone can succeed.